Welcome to Beer and Iron's baked sausage and Tots breakfast casserole, cooked in a camp cast iron Dutch oven. What a way to start off a great day. Breakfast in camp is one of my favorite meals. This recipe will not be presented in camp, but on my back patio. Family woke up this morning and asked, "What's for breakfast?" That's code for, get out there in the cold and cook us that delicious tater tot breakfast casserole we love. And make it snappy. This recipe is one of my no beer recipes. There may be no beer in this recipe, but there's plenty of iron, I guarantee. First, let's talk about the tools you'll need. You'll need a 1-cup measuring cup, a half teaspoon measuring spoon, a grater or a cheese shredder. You're going to need a knife. Optional is a meat chopper. These are sure handy-dandy tools to have both at camp and in the kitchen. You might want to get you one. A small to medium-sized mixing bowl. An extra bowl is handy as well. A pair of kitchen scissors. A wooden spatula. Another optional tool is a wooden wok shovel or a scooper of some sort. You'll see why later. A fork, but for scrambling with and not for eating with. Let's cover the ingredients. 4 slices of bacon, or thereabouts. A pound, or 450 grams of breakfast sausage, again, or thereabouts. You ain't got no breakfast sausage? No worries. Use Italian sausage. It's a great substitute. You'll need 1 to 2 bunches of green onions or scallions. We'll chop these up and we'll keep the green chives separate from the chopped bulb parts. 2½ cups of grated cheddar cheese. We'll divide out a half to 1 cup for the last steps. A half teaspoon of pepper, or thereabouts. Salt to taste. 4 large eggs. 2 cups of milk. Any fat percentage will do. We'll need about 2 pounds of frozen or thawed tater tots. And if your tater tot selection has been subject to shrinkflation, 1.75 pounds or about 800 grams of tater tots would do just fine. And there's other potato options as well. I've even used cold baked potatoes and shredded those potatoes over this dish. This is a very forgiving recipe. I'm going to bake this recipe in my regular or shallow 12-inch camp cast iron Dutch oven. Before I set that pot to fire, I like to gather and prepare all of my ingredients and have them at the ready. This way I'm not racing the fire. There's nothing like still chopping and measuring, and your briquettes are all fired up and ready to go. Pepper. I love pepper in this recipe. Though it calls for a half teaspoon, I use more. There's easier ways to prepare your pepper. Add pepper however you want to. This recipe calls for 2 bunches of green onions or scallions. I'm going to use 3. It's a cold morning, and I figure I better heat up that cast iron chimenea and pour me another cup of coffee. There. Now let the chopping commence. Chop the green chives from the green onions and keep them in a separate pile. Then on to the white parts. Chop them up fine and keep them separate. If you're in the middle of the green onions and don't know what pile to keep them in, just keep them over there with the white ends. I want to prepare my sausage for searing. I don't usually break up my sausage. I usually skillet that sausage until it browns. I like to sear my sausage like a gigantic sausage patty to get that nice sear and caramelization. This creates a lot of flavor. Even though all the ingredients will be cooked, I usually use a separate cutting board for meats. Create a large, rounded patty out of the sausage. Measure out or select out your bacon and keep it near. Now crack the eggs. Crack open 4 eggs into your mixing bowl. Add your 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Or a little more. Or, what the heck, I love pepper. Add 2 cups of milk in with the eggs and the pepper. Scramble this up very well. Then add your salt to taste. You could have done this earlier if you prefer. There. Everything is chopped, measured, scrambled, and prepared. Let's light the fire. I use matchlight briquettes as a fire starter for my hardwood briquettes. I use an oily paper towel as a good fire starter too. A viewer suggested I use an alcohol-soaked cotton ball as a fire starter. I'm going to have to give that a try in the near future. Once my fire is started, I add my hardwood briquettes. You'll need at least 24 briquettes to bake this dish, but we'll have some sautéing to do first. Let's start out with 25 to 35 briquettes. A few more briquettes are always handy, but needing more briquettes is always a burr in the saddle or a sticker in your tire. Once your briquettes are ready, pre-warm your Dutch oven before you preheat the Dutch oven. This is really not necessary, but it's a habit of mine on very cold mornings like this one. While the cast iron Dutch oven is warming up, let's shred up our cheese. We'll be adding some cheese on the inside of this casserole and then some on the top when we finish the casserole off. This recipe calls for 2.5 cups of cheese. We're going to top this recipe with about 1/2 to 1 cup of that cheese. So set out 1/2 to 1 cup of shredded cheese for later. I'll just keep it all together in this bucket and eyeball it as I add the cheese. If I need more cheese later, then that's perfectly okay. Ain't no such thing as too much cheese. Now that our pot is pre-warmed, we're going to preheat that pot by loading briquettes under that Dutch oven. Though there's some guidelines for sautéing and searing as far as briquette numbers, I usually just load them up for sautéing and searing. We'll be more exact for baking, but even then, cooking with briquettes or a campfire, there's really no rules. This is where we'll be using our scissors. Instead of chopping that bacon on a cutting board, I like to chisel it off bit by bit with these scissors. Cut up about 4 slices of bacon, and like cheese, there ain't no such thing as too much bacon. Sauté the bacon until the fat is rendered and the bacon is crispy. We'll be using this cooked bacon at the very end and adding it back to the casserole as a garnish. I use a small bowl and a paper towel to store my cooked bacon bits for later. This is where the wok shovel comes in handy. Use the wok shovel to scoop out the bacon and store that bacon for later. Now for the sausage. Add the entire round of sausage to the hot pot. Let it brown like a very large sausage patty. Then flip it over and brown the other side. Once it's browned on both sides, use the meat chopper or the flat end of your wooden spatula to break up the sausage. I like to keep the sausage in larger chunks for those amazing sausage flavor bombs. That was some lean sausage, I tell you what. Even the bacon grease is gone. Sometimes you may have to add a little oil or butter to sauté your onions. Add the white parts of your green onions and sauté them up very well. Once you've sautéed your green onion bulbs, remove the pot from the fire. Now return the sausage to the pot. Top this all with 1/2 to 1.5 cups of shredded cheese. Then, gently pour over the egg mixture into the pot. Go slow so you don't wash away the ingredients you've evenly spread out. Now for the tater tots. Add the tots evenly over the entire dish. Place the lid back on the cast iron Dutch oven. We're going to bake this dish with 24 total briquettes. We'll place 16 briquettes on the top of that Dutch oven's lid, or the equivalent, and that's the key. Do you see how the briquettes have burned down from their original size? Seeing the briquettes will help you visualize later how much heat to add if you were using the resources from a campfire. We'll be using campfires to cook with later this summer. Which reminds me, if you're enjoying this video, consider giving a thumbs up, selecting that subscribe button, and giving a little ring on that dinner bell. With 16 briquettes, or the equivalent, on the top of that Dutch oven, we'll now set 8 briquettes, or the equivalent, under the Dutch oven. For more on heating the camp cast iron Dutch oven, follow the link in the description. I'm going to set my windscreen and let it bake for 10 or 15 minutes. After 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to turn the Dutch oven. Turn the lid 1/3 of a turn in one direction, and then turn the whole pot 1/3 of a turn in the other direction. Later we're going to broil this casserole, and I want to keep an eye on my briquette supply. You could put a few more on the fire just in case you need them later. This depends on how fast your supply of briquettes are burning down. After another 10 or 15 minutes, or 20 to 30 minutes total, give the dish a peek. I'm not suggesting removing the lid to this extent, but for the purposes of this video, we'll do more than a peek. You know what cooked, or rather recooked, tater tots should look like. Do they look like they're done? Not yet? Give the pot another turn, and let's go for another 10 or 15 minutes, or 30 to 45 minutes total. Now they're ready. Perfect. Now add the green onion chives over the tater tots. Then add about a half cup to a cup of shredded cheese. And don't forget to add the bacon. Return the lid to the Dutch oven. But those briquettes, nope, they ain't got no kind of broiling power left. Some, but now they're kind of wimpy. Good thing we have a few that we prepared mid-cook. We'll add the equivalent of about 24 to 26 briquettes onto the top of that Dutch oven, and we're going to keep an eagle eye on it too. Things can burn lickety-split if we get distracted during this part of the cook. Watch it close and turn the lid every 4 to 6 minutes, though it may not take that long to broil. Let's take a final look-see. And there we go. Beautiful. That cheese is perfectly toasted and ready, and I'm hungry. I better watch it. I may be full by the time I get in there with the family. Let's get this pot off the fire and get it inside. I know they's hungry too. I appreciate you all for watching this video, I sure enough do. If you've learned something new today or just enjoyed the video, your thumbs up is much appreciated. Hit that subscribe button while you're at it and call out on that dinner bell. I'd love to hear from you. You all keep on cooking in those black cast iron beauties and enjoying those frosted glasses of that fermented barley pop. We'll see each and every one of you next time here on beeriron.com.